Former stand-up comedian and current alleged reborn Christian Russell Brand will soon face trial on 7 charges of rape and sexual assault alleged to have taken place between 1999 and 2009. He has pled not guilty on all counts, but Brand did recently admit to have what he called exploitative but consensual sex with a 16-year-old girl at the height of his fame. That admission was made on an episode of former Fox journalist Megyn Kelly's YouTube show. Now Brand has appeared on the show of yet another well-known YouTuber, Piers, with a Bible in tow. In Brand's hearing on some of the rape and sexual charges earlier this year, the recent convert took a Bible into court with him. Morgan began by asking him why.
Was that the one you took into court?
You're the very one.
Okay. What was your thinking of taking it into court? And what you were seeing, looking at some passages, what were the relevant passages for you?
All right. Thank you for asking me.
Thank you. That didn't hurt, did it?
A little bit. It was this from Isaiah. You're right, Bear did say, be chilled. Sometimes I lose the chill, man. It's pretty... It's this. They don't like that, do they, in the old gallery? But remember, you just said it's a hired spot. This is from Isaiah. Excuse me. Man, did I mark it before? It says here, the verse that I was looking at that day was not this. I can't actually find the verse that I had that day, but this is good enough.
Like one of the most excruciating 90 seconds or so I've seen in a long time. Ash, what do you make of it? I mean, there's only one thing to make of it, I guess.
I mean, you clearly haven't watched Spurs play in 2026.
Oh,
There's
right,
way more excruciating moments. I mean, yeah, it was deeply painful. I mean, my favourite thing about it, and I do think that this was actually a masterful bit of broadcast performance by Piers Morgan, because he knew that his silence was so much more powerful than anything he could say. And the punctuation of like the look to camera and to the gallery was in itself incredibly articulate. Because what you've got is this like, the pages, rustling. You can see a little bit of the handshake. And I think Russell Brand filling the sound of his own exposure with just completely nonsensical mumbling under his breath.
Yeah, grumbling, mumbling, yeah.
And just what I found so telling about the whole sequence is that Bible is full of Post-its, yellow Post-its and purple Post-its.
Everything underlined, literally everything underlined.
Everything's underlined. So what were you highlighting if not a passage that means something to you? Yeah. And it's the same way Andrew Tate uses the Quran when he's had to, show up for his court dates. It's a way of flaunting a kind of religious affiliation to an audience of men who are themselves religious because they interpret that religion as giving them a carte blanche to behave in any way they like. Like, that's what it is. It's not actually about faith. It's certainly not about forgiveness, and it's got nothing to do with what does it mean to really be contrite for the things that you've done in your life and the harm that you've caused. It's basically about signaling to another piece of the internet to try and keep some kind of following intact.
Yeah. That's interesting. So, yeah, I guess it's an appeal to authority, right? And to the authority of, the great patriarch himself to protect the sort of patriarchal things that you've been caught out in.
I wouldn't even say that. I think it's like brand affiliation. I don't think it's got anything to do with God or indeed patriarchy. It's just, how can I segment up the billions of people on the internet to find my audience, and how do I communicate with them? I think that's all it is.
Right. So finding a new audience with attached to the brand that's attached to the
That's
Bible,
it.
I guess. I saw you tweeting, I think last week, about the admission that he made to Megyn Kelly about the exploitative and yet consensual sex with the 16-year-old girl. What was it that you were saying then?
So I want to separate a couple of things, because this woman has made allegations of sexual assault, which Russell Brand is having to answer and go through a criminal justice process. So I want to separate that out from a point that I'm making, which is about, can you have an age of consent which is set at 16 and have no limits in terms of the age of their sexual partner? I think that if we have a duty to socialize young people into sexual and romantic relationships safely, having such a cliff edge where you're inexperienced, you don't know nothing about relationships, you don't know much about your own body or your own desires, and putting them in a situation with a partner who has a lot more life experience, a lot more social status, and a lot more power, I don't think that that's, you have the capacity to consent in the sense that you are free and able to make a choice without coercion or manipulation. I think there is inherently a degree of manipulation in those relationships. And so rather than just blanket increasing the age of consent, because, I think that 16, it's reasonable to say you may wish to explore sexual relationships and you're old enough to make that decision. I would say you should have a staggered age of consent. So if you're 16, you can lawfully have a sexual relationship with someone who is 17 or 18, but not above that age until you're 18. Because I do think that that kind of equality between partners is important, and I think essential to being able to make an informed choice.
I mean, there are other realms where you have like staggered age limits on things. So like the military, for example, you can sign up when you're 16, but you're not allowed to see combat till you're 18, which I also think might be too young. And so it's not like it's a novel it's not like it doesn't exist in other areas. I guess the argument that people will inevitably make is that there will be people who say, oh, actually, I had a really productive and good relationship when I was 17 with someone who was, 8 or 9 years older.
And you may have done, right? And you may have done. The thing about ages of consent is that if you draw them anywhere, there's a degree of arbitrariness. There'll be some people who are 16-year-olds and you go, you are not ready for any kind of relationship. And you may have some people where, they're 15 and you go, actually, you are emotionally really mature, but you fall on this side of the law. There is a degree of arbitrariness to it. I think in general, it's safe to say that a sexual relationship between a 16-year-old and a 30-year-old, which is the example we're talking about here with Russell Brand, is so different from a sexual relationship between a 16-year-old and a 17-year-old, or a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old. And, sex is somewhat unique, right? It's something which makes people so vulnerable. It's just you and somebody else. And you think you might have an idea of what you want. And then you get there and you're like, oh my God. And the point about having real capacity to consent, so it's not just about, being able to say yes and being able to say no, but being able to have a real understanding of what it is you want and an ability to act on it, is that's relational, right? It's not just something that you get automatically at the age of 16 and it's good in every situation. And I think that the law should reflect that the dynamic between the two partners changes the ability of someone to make that informed choice.
Yeah, look, I can't really disagree with you here. I think you're right. And I think like one of the things that I would say in favor of your proposal is that like, I don't think anyone ever suffers from not having a relationship with someone who could be potentially manipulative of them, who's many, many years older than them. Whereas plenty of people suffer from having those relationships. Like the absence of the relationship is not going to hurt anybody. It might have been a good one for somebody when they were 17 or 16, but if they hadn't had it, they would still be fine. They would have had other relationships with people who are more appropriate. Whereas, there are plenty of people who just have really, really been hurt by people who actually, if they were, had sort of sought out the relationship just a few months earlier or a year earlier, would be using a very different word for them.
And I think, I remember this from when I was a teenager, is that there was this real culture of like sleaze and fetishization of teenage girls at that point. And I was one of those teenage girls that was like sneaking into clubs and whatever. And men knew exactly how old I was. And that was part of the appeal. And when you look at the allegations lodged by this woman, one of the things that she says is that, Russell Brand would send her around a car to pick her up from school, and that she was referred to as the child, right? That sort of nudge, nudge, wink, wink transgressiveness was part of the appeal. The fact that she wasn't an adult able to make adult choices and be able to sort of exert social power in an adult way. That was part of the appeal. And I do think that part of socializing young people safely into sexuality is to protect them from that a bit.